When scientists were trekking through the rugged terrain of East Java in 1976, they stumbled upon an incredibly rare animal. Lying beneath an old tree was a Javan tiger. Sensing people nearby, without hesitation, the tiger ran off into the dense jungle, never to be seen again. What the researchers didn't know was that this would be the last time a Javan tiger was ever seen. In 2008, over 30 years after the last confirmed sighting, the subspecies was declared extinct. Since then, however, Javan tigers have been sighted many times, challenging the idea that they are extinct. So is the Javan tiger still out there? After countless hours of research, I believe I have finally uncovered the answer. And to determine the answer, we first need to understand its history. The story of the Javan tiger begins in 1844, when a Dutch zoologist realized that tigers from Indonesia's islands were distinct from those on the mainland, and so he described them as a different subspecies, Panthera sondaica. Originally, this subspecies, known as the Sunda tiger, included those from Sumatra, Bali, and Java. However, by 1929, scientists identified clear differences between them and suggested they should all be described as their own separate subspecies. But more recently, researchers have increasingly argued that only two valid subspecies exist: the mainland and Sunda tiger. In this case, the subspecies would be distinguished by its size. The Sunda tigers are noticeably smaller. This follows a phenomenon known as Bergmann's rule. Bergmann's rule states that within a group of animals, a latitudinal gradient of size exists. Animals near the poles are the biggest, and as you get closer to the tropics, they gradually become smaller. So why do the tropics cause animals to shrink? Well, since larger animals have a lower surface area to volume ratio, they give off less heat to the surroundings, keeping themselves warm. However, in tropical environments, the opposite is beneficial. And while those scientists may be right about the Javan tiger not warranting full subspecies status, it certainly has unique traits of its own. First of all, compared to the Sumatran tiger, the Javan tiger stripes are thinner and more dense, possibly an adaptation to the more expansive grassland on the island. Secondly, and much bigger of a difference, is the shape of the animal's skulls. Since each population inhabits a different area, they target specific prey, which demand their own specific adaptations. For the Javan tiger, its nose was more narrow and longer, and its carnassial teeth were significantly larger, even though we don't exactly know why. But one thing we know the reason for is their bigger paws compared to Indian tigers. Increasing the surface area, they help to mitigate heat. Their small size isn't just because of Bergmann's rule, however. On Java, the available prey for big cats are smaller due to island dwarfism, and thus require less strength to take down. And although the Javan tiger was small, they weren't the smallest, with that title going to the Bali tiger, who specialize in even smaller prey. However, at 2.5 meters, the tiger was Java's largest predator. So how did tigers end up on Java in the first place? Well, the oldest tiger remains from 2 million years ago come from Java. So the question isn't how they got to Java, but how they spread out. During the Pleistocene, sea levels dropped by up to 100 meters, and stayed like that up until only recently, allowing them to spread out across Asia. But when the tiger's genome was analyzed, something strange was found. The recent ancestors of modern tigers don't come from Java, but instead from Indochina, roughly the area where the countries of Laos, Thailand, and Burma meet. So what could explain those old fossils on Java? Well, they certainly did originate on or around Java, but the Indo-Chinese population, for whatever reason, was able to take over all of the more primitive lineages. The modern Sunda tiger branch reached the area somewhere between 110 and 12,000 years ago, before becoming isolated. But when us humans arrived on Java, we began burning its forests and hunting its animals. In an attempt to exterminate them, in the 1830s, bounties were issued for the apex predators, and they began to decline rapidly. Java's tigers were especially threatened due to the extremely high population density, which meant that humans and tigers often crossed paths. At the turn of the 19th century, around 28 million people called Java home, a figure that by the 1980s had quadrupled to over 100 million. In just a short window of time from 1938 to 1955, forest cover shrunk at a never before seen rate, dropping from 23 to 8%, leaving little habitat left for its endemic fauna. Few of these amazing animals were ever held in zoos, and in the post-war period they were so rare that zoos held Sumatran tigers instead. At the same time, demand for imported hardwood, coffee, and rubber soared, leading to the forest becoming even more degraded. By the 1940s, this had restricted the tigers to only remote forest fragments where humans rarely ventured. After 2 more decades, disease had wiped out large amounts of their prey, and they were now only found in 3 national parks. Ujung Kulon, where up to 12 were believed to remain, is a lowland peninsula on Java's west coast. Today, it is famous for being the final stronghold of the Javan rhino, but then tigers were the priority. However, within a few years they had disappeared from all 3 of their final sanctuaries. Although in 1971, an old female tiger was shot near Mount Batiri, and the next year, in an attempt to protect this final population, the area was turned into a reserve. Located in Java's southeast, the park stretches across the unforgiving terrain from the coast to the region's tallest mountain. Soon after their rediscovery, a tiger protection unit was established to patrol the park in search of poachers, and 4 different habitat management strategies were implemented. But the reserve might have actually been doomed to fail from the start. 2 major plantations spanning the length of the river valleys dissected the tiger's habitat into 3 isolated areas, and the roads that connected them penetrated deep into the forest, meaning that hunters could easily lace the forest floor with snares. The tiger's main prey were all grazing species too, who require more open and flatter areas, all of which had been eaten up by deforestation. All of this led to the last confirmed sighting in 1976, and since then no confirmed sightings, not even their tracks, have been found in the park. Unconfirmed reports by locals continued for 3 years, but as only a few banteng and no rooster survived, the tigers really didn't have a chance. In a last-ditch effort, the park was extended and encroachment was restricted, but it was too late, they were gone. In 1984, a tiger was apparently killed near Mount Salak, and even though their tracks were found nearby, the tiger's body never surfaced and it was most likely a leopard, a species which is known to live in the area. Later expeditions found no evidence of the elusive big cats. Then in 1992, camera traps were deployed across the island's national parks to look for both tigers and other animals. Whilst they recorded rhinos, leopards and dholes, they failed to capture any tigers. 7 years later, in 1999, it was decided to use infrared cameras instead, as tigers are mostly nocturnal and their heat signals would be easier to pick up. Yet no evidence was brought to light, and in 2008, after decades of intense search, the IUCN declared the Javan tiger extinct. But many people still hope that they survived in some remote area that hadn't yet been explored. Many future sightings, like one of a tigress with 2 cubs near Lau Mountain, are more easily explained by a misidentification of a leopard. In fact, in 2017, a ranger at Ujung Kulon took a photo of what he believed to be a tiger, but when experts examined the image, they immediately saw the animal's spotted pattern instead of stripes. This confusion with leopards is made worse with a number of hoaxes, such as a tiger claimed to have been photographed near Mount Arjuna. The image, when carefully examined, was shown to be of a Bengal tiger at a zoo instead, but by then the story had spread across the internet, even though the whole thing was a hoax. Just when it seemed as if all hope was lost, in 2019 a much more believable encounter occurred. A conservationist and 4 others were walking around a farm, when all of a sudden what they believed to be a tiger jumped over a fence and darted across the path in front of them. What makes this sighting more believable is not just that a conservationist was there, but that 4 others also identified the animal as a tiger. In light of the encounter, 10 days later, a researcher visited the site, finding claw marks and footprints that proved they had in fact seen a big cat. Yet more conclusive evidence would be needed to find out if it was a tiger, and the key to the answer was found on that fence. Whilst jumping over, a single strand of hair got caught and stuck to it. Knowing the importance of the hair, scientists examined it, and in 2024 the results came back. They revealed a 97% and 96.9% match to Sumatran and Bengal tigers respectively. Immediately, people jumped to the conclusion that the Javan tiger was still out there, and soon the internet was flooded with the alleged reappearance of the extinct predator. But as it turns out, the study was completely flawed. The hairs from the museum specimens examined don't even match a tiger's mitochondrial DNA, and instead represent nuclear pseudogenes, combined with an unusually high number of mismatches within the Javan tiger reference sample, and the fact that the paper didn't say how the data was obtained, brought skepticism from scientists. And instead, the 97% match was between a leopard and a tiger, 2 closely related animals that share about that much DNA. So my final verdict, is the Javan tiger extinct? Yes. On the most densely populated island on Earth with over 150 million people. With decades of intense search and persistent threats, the chance of the tigers remaining undetected this entire time is incredibly low. Instead, efforts should be directed to other Javan animals, like Jacobson's bubble nest frog or the Javan lapwing, which are much more likely to be surviving. If you've made it this far, it's safe to say that you are interested in extinct animals, so click this video to find out about some prehistoric creatures that have been preserved in ice.